of washed out. I don't know how to fix it.
Okay,
Sorry.
and she's calling Sturgeon and Rulon.
Yes,
Okay, let's
yes.
get started.
Okay.
Can we start? Yes, it's 12:04.
Can we turn it on? Can we see it, or do we need to see it? Well, let's turn it on so all of us can see it.
Thanks, Christian. Okay, Susie, Anita, start.
All right, thank you. Wow, good afternoon to everybody. And I'm going to call this June 15th, 2020 meeting to order. And I would ask our secretary, Ms. Susie McCoy, if you would please call the roll.
All right. Mr. Bingston,
Here.
Ms. Davis,
Here.
Mr. Lawhorn,
Here.
Ms. Payne, Mr. Peters,
Here.
Ms. Carney,
Here.
and Ms. Price.
Here, and we have a quorum. I want to thank everybody for indulging in these technological challenges, and we will proceed. And let me just make this disclaimer very quickly. Our members of the board are present by electronic communication, and I declare that a quorum is present as permitted by Amendment 28 to HB 29. According to the Virginia Code, several sections. Each member of the board has been accessed through the Zoom meeting platform and can participate in this proceeding. The city has provided the public with information to allow public access to observe this regular meeting through live streaming on Facebook. Members of the public are also afforded the opportunity to join the Zoom platform as observers. GRTC has provided notice of this agenda and process to the public on Thursday, June 11, 2020. GRTC staff, including the Vice President of Operations, Secretary, and General Counsel, are also present on the 4th floor conference room adjacent to the City Attorney office and are also participating in this regular meeting. To facilitate the process today, to ensure that all board members and the public can follow these proceedings, I ask that whenever a member speaks, including making a motion, please first state your name and then make the motion or your second. At this time, I'll ask, does anybody have any questions about this process before we proceed? But I do want to make one quick personal point before we begin. I want to thank Melinda Payne, I don't know if she's joined us yet, for conducting the meeting, our last meeting on that was the beginning of life being changed for us forever with the effects of the COVID virus. And I also want to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the staff members, everybody, because I know you guys have worked so diligently trying to make all of this happen, to make sure that we can continue to conduct the business as needed, but at the same time, keeping us all safe. So my heartfelt thanks to each and every last one of you. And now let's proceed with our meeting. And I hope everyone has already received the materials. They were emailed out last week. And has everyone had a chance to read the minutes? And without objection, I say let's dispense with the reading of the minutes and approve as recorded. Is there a motion?
This is Karen, so moved.
A second?
Bob. I'll second that.
Thank you. I don't think we need a roll call on that, do we?
Just all in favor.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. All right, we will proceed now with item 3 and begin with our general manager, Kevin Price, with manager's update. Mr. Price, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam President, and good afternoon, members of the board. First of all, let me say thank you to this board for the support as Valley Metro has found its way through this COVID-19 pandemic and all the operations things that go along with that. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is just give another brief update of how we're doing as far as our responses to the COVID-19 issue. We've been able to offer fare-free transit services. We've, to the best of our ability, created social distancing while using transit. Also, with passenger limits going from initially 9 to gradually, in concert with the governor, going to governor's actions, going to 15 passengers. Various PPE to most of the staff, to the point where we've received 2 shipments now of PPE from the Federal Transit Administration in support of what we're trying to do. So we're able to give out PPE to passengers as they need it. And also various signs throughout the buses from recommendations of the CDC. So as we continue to move forward, I think we've made decisions that we can move forward with, but we've made decisions that we can also reverse. And so we're able to flex with what's going on as far as the pandemic is concerned. So we'll stay prayed up, and we'll continue to move forward and keep all the employees safe and the passengers safe as well as we continue to provide public transportation.
Right.
Do you have any questions about that?
Does anyone have any comments or questions about what we're doing as far as COVID? And I do want to say thank you very much to you and your staff for being able to rise to the occasion in these very uncertain times. And I appreciate the conversations you and I have had, and just making sure that we're doing as much as we can to keep everybody safe.
Yes, ma'am. If there are no questions, I'll move on to the next item. It's the CARES Act funding. As a result of actions in Washington, it was passed and signed by the president that they will provide support for transit as far as some financial backing. And in our case, we received $8.1 million from the CARES Act for 5307 or fixed route, and 1.1 million for commuter service, or 5311 for the smart way. And so we're going to be using those funds for planning, operating, and capital expenses, and also to offset any fare-free periods that we've had in this current fiscal year. And maybe, if depends on how things work out in the next fiscal, we have some contingencies built into the budget to kind of help with that. So we're pleased with that, and we're thankful for that. So we're able to continue our services without furloughs, without suspension of service for financial reasons. So we're in a good position for this current fiscal and in the next fiscal year.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
And our next item is our public meeting, or public input opportunity, this Thursday at the Campbell Transfer Center for the Transit Transfer Center, the new Transit Transfer Center. We're looking forward to that, so we can get more input from the citizens in order so we can build something that's sustainable, that's also complementary to the area, but also provides a great transit experience for our passengers and employees. So that will be June 18th from 4:30 to 7. It'll be an open house format, so we'll have opportunity for anyone who's interested to go around to look at the different concepts, the different ideas, and also we can receive some ideas from those who attend. So I encourage all who's able to please come by and see where we are.
Kevin, before you move on, did you give the location as to where that public meeting will be held?
Yes, ma'am. It's the Campbell Court Transfer Center on the second floor.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Okay, go right ahead, sir.
Yes, ma'am. And lastly, our ridership, and this time we did a little bit different. We wanted to kind of show how the COVID-19 has affected transit ridership for us. And as indicated in my report, December we're doing very well as far as bringing transit back up to the plus side. But then if you'll notice in January, February, March, April, and May, and finally May, that's when we started experiencing some of a downturn in ridership. But I will say this, that a lot of transit systems around the nation have experienced greater loss as far as ridership is concerned, up to the point where we've seen other transit systems experience loss in ridership up to 98%. So you can imagine what that does. And so I don't want to say we were lucky, but our transit system as compared to others is performing strong, even under the specter of COVID-19. So.
Absolutely. Good job. Thank God for that.
Well, it just goes to show how vital public transportation is to the valley. So if there ever was any question about its viability, the ridership has been sustained for us.
Beautiful. That is great news. Good to hear. Are there any other comments from anyone?
President Price, this is Sherman Stovall. I just want to recognize Kevin and Ron Parker for the excellent job that they did with implementing the operational changes, more specifically implementing the limits on the number of passengers that are able to board each bus. Their planning was excellent. We had very few problems. They get a lot of attention when things don't go quite as planned, but they basically got no attention for the excellent job that they did. So I just want to commend them for their efforts.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Stovall. I think it goes without saying that we most certainly do want to commend Mr. Price and Mr. Parker for the outstanding job they did being proactive and responding to the concerns that not only our ridership were concerned about, but also for the workers and for the staff. So we all add our congratulations and thanks to you both. Are there any other comments?
Ms. Price, it's
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask and to add on to that, Mr. Price, I do, again, appreciate your leadership as we talked about. And I was wondering if you had any feedback, just anecdotal, from the drivers themselves, how things have been over the course of the past couple weeks after the policies were put into place to limit ridership. Did they feel like they were adequately protected? And what have you just heard? I'm interested in hearing how the staff is doing. I think for everybody on this call, anybody in a position of leadership right now is having to make so many decisions with such limited information constantly. And so, sometimes it's days or weeks after the fact that we really understand the repercussions of the decisions we've made. And so I'm just interested in hearing what you've heard from staff and from drivers with regards to their experience throughout the shutdown and the limitations.
Right. Well, the operators, they've been on the front lines and they've responded well to what we've asked them to do. And to that point, well, one of the things we established way before this was transparency, and we meet with them often. We want their input before we make decisions. We get their expertise about what's happening on the street. And so Ron and I, we hardly ever or rarely will make a decision without consulting our bargaining unit and how they feel about what's going on. And so when we make decisions, it's together. When we make changes, it's together. because they're out there and they're dealing with what's happening out there, and we want them to feel like they have a part in what's happening. And so we've had maybe 5 or 6 meetings just to talk. And so when we talk about that, we say, this is what we're thinking about. What do you think? And they say this, that, and the other. And oftentimes when we go in with a thought, we'll come out with a different mindset based on what the operators have asked us to do. But you know, sometimes there are, like you said, Ms. Davis, that there are decisions that have to be made on the spot. But even then, we'll go back and kind of explain what the background on that was. And so what we've heard from the operators is actually, it's been fairly good news. Is we have great passengers. I'm sure if you're aware of that. We have great passengers, and the community that's been built for transit is, you see the same folks every day. And so the passengers have been taking care of the operators have been taking care of the passengers to the point where we're probably at 90% of our passengers being matched. And they understand that they need to protect the operator, and the operator needs to protect the passenger. So I think we've kept the lines of communication fairly open to the point where either Ron or I will go down to Camp McCord and say, hey, how are things going? What can we do better? And so we're comfortable with how we're processing and trying to make decisions that are good for everyone.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments from any other members of the board? All right, hearing none, we will receive your reports, receive and file, and we will now move on to item 3A2, which is the awarding of our transit management contract. There is one measure, a resolution. I need a motion.
This is Karen, so moved.
Thank you. And is there a second?
This is Michelle, second.
Thank you. And I will ask Ms. McCoy if she would read the title paragraph.
A resolution accepting the proposal of First Transit, Inc. for providing transit management and operation services for the Greater Roanoke Transit Company doing business as Valley Metro, awarding a contract for such services, authorizing the Vice President of Operations or the Assistant Vice President of Operations of GRTC to execute such contract, and authorizing the Vice President of Operations or Assistant Vice President of Operations to take such further actions and execute such further documents, including any renewals authorized by the contract, as may be necessary to implement, administer, and enforce such contract.
Thank you, Ms. McCoy. Are there any comments, any of the members of the board or staff? Hearing none, I'll ask Ms. McCoy if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Bingston,
Aye.
Ms. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Lawhorn,
Aye.
Ms. Payne, Mr. Peters,
Aye.
Ms. Carney,
Aye.
and Ms. Price.
Aye, and the resolution passes. Thank you. Item 3A2 is to adopt our fiscal 21 GRTC operating budget, which I believe was sent as additional email attachment. There is one measure, and I ask for a resolution. I'm sorry, a motion to pass the resolution. I need a motion.
This is Karen, so moved.
This is Michelle, second.
Thank you. Ms. McCoy, please read the title paragraph.
A resolution establishing a specific meeting schedule for the Board of Directors of the Greater Roanoke Transit Company.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes. Are there any comments? Anyone got that?
Wait a
And
minute.
I was looking at the wrong item. Sorry.
Oh, you're looking at the wrong, because Or she's looking at the wrong item.
I'm looking at yes. You just gave the measure for adopting the calendar, correct?
Yes.
No, you did
the
the
meeting-
budget.
That was the next item on the agenda.
Okay. so-
Yeah. That's okay, since we've already,
I'm on 3A3.
I have 3A3 as the budget.
No, I have 3A3 as the board meeting schedule.
Okay, no problem. You've already introduced it, so
Yes.
let's go ahead and pass the meeting schedule. Is everyone clear?
Why doesn't the clerk, let's get a motion and a second on adopting the meeting schedule. Ms. McCarskey-Carney, you move that,
I did.
and Ms. Davis, you second it,
Correct.
and the clerk will read the title.
All right, I'll read this title. A resolution establishing a specific meeting schedule for the Board of Directors of the Greater Roanoke Transit Company.
Thank you. And we do, I hope I'm not going to go through the meeting schedule, but I hope everyone has that in front of them. All right, if you would read call the roll.
Mr. Bingston,
Aye.
Ms. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Lawhorn,
Aye.
Mr. Peters,
Aye.
Ms. Carney,
Aye.
and Ms. Price.
Aye, and that resolution passes. All right, now we should be at the fiscal 21 operating budget. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I need a motion.
This is Bob Bengtson. I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Michelle Davis, the eternal second today.
Thank you. All right, and let's hear the title paragraph on the operating budget.
A resolution approving a fiscal year 2021 budget for the Greater Roanoke Transit Company.
Thank you. All right. Does everyone have that particular information, and are there any questions that you have on the upcoming operating budget?
Ms. Price, there are a couple comments that I would like to make for the benefit of the board. With respect to passenger revenue, the budgeted revenue has been adjusted based on trend. And it also reflects the possibility of having to extend fare free either into the new fiscal year or at some point during the new fiscal year. It does include one additional part-time accounting position. On the expense side, it does include the increase in health insurance and dental insurance based on current projections. As Kevin indicated earlier, the budget programs approximately $6.5 million in federal CARES Act funding. As a result of the CARES Act funding and standard federal and state funding, which is reduced, it results in a reduced local subsidy and billing costs to the participating jurisdictions for 1 year and 1 year only. I would point out to the board that the city of Roanoke reduced its local subsidy of Valley Metro to facilitate the balancing of the city general fund budget. This will result in a reduction in peak service, but because of the CARES Act funding, that reduction in peak service will be delayed for a year. So in fiscal year 21 and 22, there will be a reduction in peak service. You may recall from the comprehensive operational analysis, the savings from the reduction in peak service was going to be reallocated to extend service for 2 specific new routes. And because of this reduction, that will not be able to be accomplished. So that will only be able to be accomplished with new funding. So just wanted to make certain that the board has knowledge of the adjustment in peak service.
Thank you. That is critical information. I'm glad you shared that with us. So I just want to make sure I understood what you're saying, that peak service will be delayed and not necessarily be enforced right away.
That is correct for the current fiscal year.
Great. All right. Good news. Thank you. All right. Are there any other questions or comments on the budget? Hearing none, I'll ask the secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Bingston,
Aye.
Ms. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Lawhorn,
Aye.
Mr. Peters,
Aye.
Ms. Carney,
Aye.
and Ms. Price.
Aye, and the budget passes. Thank you all for your diligence and work. All right, our next item to authorize amendment number 1 to reinstate an agreement for the exchange of real estate between the City of Roanoke and GRTC dated on September 17th, 2019. I do need a motion.
Bob Benson, I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Michelle Davis, and I'll second.
Do your second. Thank you. Very good. All right, please read the title paragraph.
A resolution approving the execution, delivery, and performance by the Greater Roanoke Transit Company of an amendment number 1 to the first reinstated agreement for the exchange of real estate between the City of Roanoke, Virginia, and GRTC dated September 17, 2019, to provide for 1, the sale and transfer of the GRT reallocation parcels as described below to Greater Roanoke Transit Company from the City of Roanoke, Virginia, and 2, the acquisition of Campbell Court as described below by the city from GRTC, authorizing the president and general manager of GRTC to execute the amendment number 1 to the first reinstated agreement for the exchange of real estate between the city and GRTC, and authorizing the president and/or general manager to execute such further documents and take such further actions as may be necessary to accomplish the sale of real estate property and the acquisition of real property.
Thank you very much. This is a very critical and important piece of action. Does anyone have any comments that they would like to make at this time?
Ms. Price, it's Michelle.
Yes,
Hey,
ma'am.
I just got a text from Melinda. She's trying to sign on, and given how important this is, can we hold on just 1 second and see if we can get Melinda in this meeting?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, give me just 1 second. Let me make sure she's got the, I'm going to mute myself, make sure she's got the appropriate.
And while, thank you all for your indulgence, because as we all know, this is the first critical leg of action to make certain that the fruition of making this happen come to reality is very important. Does anyone else have any other comments or observations they would like to make while we're waiting?
Ms. Price, I've got Melinda actually on my phone, which I know is not how we're supposed to do this, but she is listening now. Melinda, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
No,
Okay.
I'm good with, yeah, I'm good.
So she is at least listening to the conversation now.
So just to make sure that we're transparent, I will ask Mr. Callahan, is Ms. Payne, is it okay for her to participate in taking this vote?
As long as she can hear everybody and we can hear her, and we all just heard it.
Excellent. All right. I love technology when it works. All right. So I will ask Ms. McCoy, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Bingston,
Aye.
Ms. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Lawhorn,
Aye.
Ms. Payne,
Aye.
Mr. Peters,
Aye.
Ms. Carney. Ms. Carney,
Sorry, I had myself muted. I'm an aye.
okay. And Ms. Price.
Aye, and the motion unanimously passes. Congratulations. Thank you all. All right. Whew. Item 3A6 is external audit from Brown and Edwards, and without objection, I'll just ask that you receive that report.
No, they gotta present.
Oh, I'm sorry. They got a, oh, there's a presentation?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Carry on. My mistake.
Is it okay if I go ahead and get started?
Absolutely. I apologize.
No, not a problem. No,
And I saw you earlier and completely overlooked you. Go right
that's
ahead.
all right. Hey, thank you all for having me. My name's Chris Banta. I'm the audit partner from Brown Edwards in charge of your audit engagement once again this year. And the purpose of this meeting is simply to really kick off the 2020 audit process. I'm really happy to say that we got re-engaged this year through the external the proposal process. That was really exciting for our firm because we really enjoyed getting the opportunity to work with you last year. So as I go through this really just discusses the process that we'll be starting here pretty much right now and going through the fall, auditing your June 30, 2020 books. And I have a presentation I'm just going to go through on my other screens. I don't think you have it in front of you, but just a reminder on the scope of your audit. Your audit will have 3 phases and it's subject to 3 different types of standards. First of all, auditing standards that are just generally accepted and applied to all audits performed in the United States. Government auditing standards also apply to your audit because you are a government entity and you do receive federal and state funding. And then of course we will perform what's called a single audit, which is focused solely on testing the compliance of your federal awards and how you spent and used federal funds during the year. One of the things I do like to point out, I did last year as well, is the transit experience we have. We also work with and audit Greater Lynchburg Transit, Greater Richmond Transit, Blacksburg Transit, Harrisonburg Transit, and a number of other transit agencies. As Kevin mentioned earlier, you saw there was about, what, $9.2 million of CARES Act money that you received this year. That is all going to be subject to special compliance testing by external auditors. So it's nice to have kind of the bench strength of all these other transit agencies. So in case your team has questions that are specific to spending the money, using it, compliance questions, we have a team internally and a team of clients that we can get you the right answers for. So that's going to come in handy a lot because we are fielding questions constantly from local government clients about what to do and how to stay compliant with using that CARES Act money. Obviously, the primary focus of our audit is to audit your financial statements. That's the actual numbers, the balance sheet, the operating statement, and focus on your financial statements themselves and give the board, your customers, your citizens assurance that they are materially correct. And that will be our primary focus. That audit focus is split up into 3 phases. First of all, there is the planning phase. The planning phase, a lot of that does not involve your team too much. I mean, we will talk to your finance director and all, but most of that involves meetings and risk assessment and planning procedures that are done at our office. And during that time, we'll communicate with your team to coordinate our schedules, but we will do internally, we will have meetings where we determine what are the risky areas, what are the areas that we should focus on this year. And one of the biggest things that we talk about in all of these meetings, and we've been talking about, is the CARES Act money and just how did COVID-19 impact your operations? I mean, we know there were free fares. We know there were reduced routes. We know there's reduced seats available for social distancing. I mean, it's impacting, this pandemic is impacting all of our clients. And while we haven't seen the June 30 financials yet, we know they're going to look pretty different than the June 30, 19 financials. So But that's been one of the key areas of focus for us, is just saying, one of the first things we want to do is just understand how this pandemic impacted the operations financially of Valley Metro. So that's the planning phase. The planning phase, that's been going on, honestly, since about early May and continues as we speak. The second phase, which will take place in July, is what we call the interim phase. And during that phase, what we'll do is we will gain an understanding of your processes, which we've done in the past because we've audited you before, but we're going to want to understand what's changed. We know that there's a new individual in finance, so we look forward to working with her. And we will just understand if there's been any changes in your processes and how that could change our audit scope. We'll also do some interim testing on journal entries. We'll test your federal awards and read your board minutes, things of that nature. Right now, a lot of that will be done off-site. Most of the time we do interim work on-site, but because of the pandemic, we've had to move off-site and work remotely. And for the most part, that's actually been a pretty successful process. Most of our clients, because of where we are using technology, have been able to adapt to that. But we'll work with your team to make sure that we're meeting your needs, to be able to give us the information, but also to make sure that we're meeting your policies in relation to being on-site. Then, of course, after that, after July, we'll step away for a little bit while management closes your books. And then in the middle of August and into September, we will be on site, probably for a week and a half. And that will be actually auditing your numbers, auditing the balance sheet, the financial statements themselves. And then during that time, we're really going to understand, what happened this year with in relation to COVID-19. How did you spend the CARES money? What do you plan to do with the CARES money? And then look at your financial statements themselves. Well, one thing too I do like to discuss is what are some of the new things out there that could have implications on your audit. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board governs the accounting for local governments. There were a number of what we call GASBs that were applicable this year, but because of the pandemic, implementing accounting standards actually got delayed. Which is interesting. But so we do not have any new standards that would apply to Valley Metro. But I don't think we would have had anyways. Any of the ones that were applicable this year probably would not have had any implications on you anyways. But like I said before, the primary focus is really going to be COVID-19, CARES Act money. How did it impact you? And we have audit procedures that we're currently in the process of designing that will apply specifically to COVID-19 and CARES Act money. Some of those are based on the risk of misspending CARES Act funds, just understanding how you spent it, things of that nature. But that's in process right now. As I mentioned also, you do have a single audit performed on your financials, and that is because you have federal funding. And because of the control matters that were reported last year, you are now no longer a low-risk auditee. For the next 2 years, you're a not low-risk auditee. And what that means simply is that we have to test 40% of your federal awards as opposed to 20%. The nature of the awards that transit agencies receive is that no matter what program we're testing, we're always going to hit way over 50% of your grants, because your operating funds from the FTA, your capital funds from the FTA, all of those are tested as one item every year. And so we'll hit well over 40% of your federal awards this year. Just a few other things too. Our goal is to be done the audit by Halloween, by October 31st this year. We plan to issue an opinion and meet with the board with this group again shortly after issuing that audit. And also just a reminder too, we are the audit firm for both the city and the schools as well. So we are the audit firm for all components of the city. However, schools and Valley Metro get separate audits, but it's just nice to be the auditor for all three pieces, to know what is going on at the primary government. How is there additional assistance that the federal government or that the city is providing. And it's also nice to be located in town as well, to be a firm in town, because we do understand, we read the newspaper, we know what's going on. And with the new transit facility, very interested to see how that shakes out, and just to see that that new facility once it begins. And that's going to be a focus as well, going towards the end of this audit and going into next year's audit. Just by the time the audit's been completed, what kind of commitments have you entered into for construction or design and things of that nature, and how much of that will be federally funded or state funded, and what kind of disclosures do we have because of that. And like I said, we are in the process of planning right now, and we will be on site next month to do the interim testing, and we are looking forward to the second year of an audit. The first year of every audit, you're really getting to know your team, getting to know the organization. And the second year is, there's always an extreme increase in efficiency, because you just know the people, you know the organization, you know what to ask for. And we're really looking forward to that this year.
Great. Thank you.
Hmm?
Does anyone have any comments or questions of Chris?
Ms.
Well,
Price, Ms. Price, this is Dan. Drew
Yes.
Furman is on the call as well, and I don't know if he has any comments that he wanted to share.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Drew Harmon, Ms. Price, members of the board. Thank you for having us today. Hopefully you got a clear understanding of the audit process for the financial statements from Chris's presentation. I think his contact information is at the end of that presentation, in case you have any questions or comments you'd like to make directly to him later. Of course, you can call me, and I think that concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Drew. I'm glad to know you're with us as well. And let me just apologize again to Chris. We do have your presentation.
Okay.
And yes, thank you. So we were able to follow along with you as we're going through the process. And I'm very appreciative of the fact that we have so much continuity, the fact that your firm is in charge of all three major components of the city, not only GRTC and the city, but also with the Roanoke City Schools. So that is very important as we navigate through some of these uncharted waters that we're experiencing, and that we can have some continuity and some context as to how all these pieces are integrated with one another. So thank you again for your good work.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, without objection, this external audit will be received and filed. And thank you again.
Thank you. And I'm going to sign off now. Thank you very much.
All right. And thank you for your patience.
Oh, no problem at all. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Item 4 is other business. And I understand that we are going to have some changes with our board members, but I do want to thank Bob Bingston and Pete Peters for your being a part of this board, and thank you so much for your diligent service to GRTC.
Thank you, Ms. Price.
And is there any other business? Yes, Mr. Callahan.
Yes, Ms. Price, just to remind Ms. Davis and you that the stockholder meeting is at 1:30 today. That's a new Zoom meeting that you've got that's on your council. The rest of the board does not have to attend that meeting. You're welcome to join it at the end of the meeting and deal with that. Of course, my phone went off. But that, just make sure everybody understands that you'll start at 1:30.
Okay, thank you. I was hoping you'd make that clarification as to whom needed to be at the 1:30 session. So thank you for that. Is there any other business that needs to come before the board before we adjourn? There is one thing that I do want to mention. Our next meeting is July the 20th, 1 o'clock. And hopefully by then we will be able to meet in person. I want to thank everyone again for putting together all the logistics in order to make these meetings happen. if Mr. Price, Kevin, there is one thing that I would like to ask for that July meeting. Certainly we had to cover quite a bit today on today's agenda, but I would ask that on that July agenda, would you please prepare an overview of the history of what has been happening with the Walmart bus shelter? And I don't want you to go into the exhaustive efforts that staff has been making to make that particular bus shelter happen. But, you know, we're talking about our big transit facility, but I certainly don't want us to lose sight of that project that has been going on for a number of years. So if you could just give us a brief overview of the history of what all has been taking place and why we are where we are and the status of that shelter for now.
Yes, ma'am. Sure, we'll do that.
All right, thank you. Any other business to come before this board? If not, we stand adjourned and thank you one and all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, be safe.